the DeFUD Podcast.
Everyone will say to you the same two things. If it doesn't get us to the POC or it doesn't win us a POC, we're not building it. And I think putting this holy grail around the actual proof of concept at the customer site, when you have the first early deals and all of them are competitive and they're trying out different types of products, you need to just be better than others. And I think we just had a better win rate moving first into the market. We did a lot of marketing noise. We just hired this and moved faster than others. And I think when you have a competitive category such as ours, you have to operate like that.
And of course, now that you're on the inside of Palo Alto Networks, as you're looking potentially at other companies to acquire or do M&A with, what are the top three factors that position or interest of Palo Alto Networks or CrowdStrike or any of these platform providers to a company that they're looking to acquire?
Yeah. So I think first off, that's a great question. And of course, I'm not going to talk about the product strategy of where we're headed, but I will say each organization does it a little bit differently. I've done it with Microsoft and I've done it at Palo Alto Networks. Typically, you start the year with kind of topic areas because you hear it from customers. You start seeing where you start losing a couple of deals.
Hi, I'm Nancy. Hello, and welcome to the DeFUD Podcast. In this episode, we're super thrilled to have Dan Benjamin, who's co-founder and CEO of Digg Security, with us today. Dan founded Digg Security in 2021, and 2 years later, in 2023, Palo Alto Networks purchased Digg Security for a reported $350 million in one of the fastest seed-to-exit stories ever. Before founding Digg Security, Dan shaped Microsoft's cloud security product strategy and M&A, and prior to that, he served as a CTO in residence at Google Cloud for startups. Wow, what a fantastic background, Dan.
Thank you so much, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, and for those of you who are tuned in, I'm sure you all have seen many different Gartner reports, tons of reports from various analysts as well as CISOs out there about just how big, but also how crowded the DSPM, which stands for Data Security Posture Management space, has been, right? And thus far, we've heard about a few acquisitions in the same space as Digg Security, as early as, for example, last year, where Rick acquired Laminar for $110 million. CrowdStrike acquired Flow Security just recently for an estimated $210 million. What do you credit to getting a higher valuation and also being one of the first players in the market to get acquired?
First off, all my competitors were good competitors. I like a competitive category. I think that's a good thing in cybersecurity. I always believe that cybersecurity operates like an accordion. Every time there's a new category, the accordion expands. And then after a couple of years, we see the accordion contract as we start seeing acquisitions. This is a good category, of course. Now, in my opinion, when we understood that there was a good category, we started seeing market traction. We started seeing RFIs. We started seeing CISOs buying into the story, right? Because first off, it's like a thesis. We just ran faster than others. And if you ask every single product manager at Digg, what are the two principles that we build at Digg in the first couple of years? Everyone will say to you the same two things. If it doesn't get us to the POC or it doesn't win us a POC, we're not building it. And I think putting this holy grail around the actual proof of concept at the customer site, when you have the first early deals and all of them are competitive and they're trying out different types of products, you need to just be better than others. And I think we just had a better win rate moving first into the market. We did a lot of marketing noise. We just hired this and moved faster than others. And I think when you have a competitive category such as ours, you have to operate like that. I think in my category, it was us, Sierra, Laminar that kind of moved super quickly. And we pushed each other to the edge. Who can hire faster? Who can bring the actual product to market faster? I think we had good clarity into what we need to build. And then it's just who executes faster than others. And we were able to move super quickly. I'm super excited about that. And we got a couple of really good deals. And I think that when Palo acquires a company in general, not only, of course, they look at the best technology, who's the best technology that fit, of course, their strategy. And we had a lot of good synergy there. But they also look at who are the founders that they're going to work with for the next couple of years. Who already has background in corporate, for example, right? Now, founders that never experienced corporate in their life, it's going to be a big shock for them. And because kind of God, Ido, myself already worked in extra large companies, it helped us navigate through this shift, which is always a different kind of beast than a startup that you can do whatever you want. So we were able to maneuver that aspect as well. So I think it was just good personal chemistry, good market traction, probably one of the best products in the market, if not the best, and a good understanding of how this market is going to evolve to. And I think one of the last aspects of it is the whole concept of us thinking of how this is going to shape also AI security. And this is not just a data security play, it's also an AI security play. We published a blog post, I think in June of 2023, of how we think AI security is a data security problem. And apparently this is one of the blog posts that's navigating Palo to us versus others because of the understanding that basically AI security is a data security problem. And how do we think about this? What is our plan around it? What have we already started building around this category? So I would say just a couple of good factors that kind of all merge together into a product acquisition.
Yeah, no, that was interesting to hear your perspective on moving fast and winning a POC relative to your startup founders and peers in the startup land. But generally speaking, I think, Dan, people who have been in this space or bigger companies who have been in the space around data governance, data security, big ideas, what do you think they were missing out on when trying to compete in a niche space that you were carving out with your POCs? I think the reason I ask this question is one, from competitive standpoint, how do you build that moat when you have bigger gorillas out there? And what message do you want to send to other startup founders on how to cope up with that reality in any category?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, data security is not a new category. Data security has been around for a while. I think originally it started with the Guardiums and Varonis, and Big AD kind of as one of the newer vendors in this category. But the piece is that data security, I mean, typically when you think about this in customer environment, customers have data in 5 main locations: endpoint, email, on-prem, SaaS, and public cloud. Endpoint is already a solved or unsolved problem, but endpoint DLP, whether we like it or not, right? That's not a space that we want to compete in. Email has email DLP, whether we like it or not. You have Proofpoint and kind of vendors in that category. On-prem, I would probably say that like Varonis is still the leading vendor in this specific category. They built for on-prem. Everything is connector based, and they'll have connectors for any legacy old data security product out there in the market. But in the cloud, no one really tackled this. Most enterprises still kept all their information on-prem. And taking that on-prem approach and trying to apply it into the cloud is just what made them fail in this category. And I think that's what created this kind of white space for us and for other vendors in my category to come in and say, we're building this for cloud and we're going to do this. We're going to be the king of cloud security, cloud data security, of course. And we just built it in an approach that made sense. Think about this. All of the old vendors were connector based. So let's say an organization has 10,000 data stores, which is a mid-sized enterprise. That means that someone using an older product, let's say a Varonis, a Big AD, had to manually connect 10,000 data stores into a single product. That took them years to operationalize a single product. With a solution like ours, they essentially give us a role into their cloud and everything was done automatically. 24 hours, you have a map of your entire data. So 3 years versus 24 hours, I think that was a no-brainer of why we won in kind of the cloud native or cloud first, or let's say where the weight in the cloud was bigger. Okay. Now, I do think that they'll, of course, try to mitigate and bridge that gap. But when you have a white space, you just need to move super, super quickly and start getting market traction in that specific category. And then you can move into their space as well. And that's what we did as well. We started with cloud. We did cloud extremely well. And then we said, okay, we'll go into SaaS. We'll go into on-prem. We'll start taking their business. And I think that's what allows us to navigate and move quickly. I think also that each one has a little bit of a different focus. No one is tackled on the identity governance and the older products like old on-prem file shares and how do you do governance and whatever there. Big AD started as a privacy company. And navigating once you're already a big company, tackle a new topic or tackle a new kind of product category, I think it's challenging. Even if you still have the building blocks, it's still navigating a bigger ship. And a startup is nimble. It's like a speedboat. And as long as you know how to point that speedboat in the right direction, you typically can navigate quite well. I think a lot of times startups fail because they don't know how to navigate that speedboat in the right direction, or they try to cover things that they shouldn't. Many times I meet a lot of founders 1 or 2 years in, and they do a big product demo, and they show me pieces of multiple different products, but none of them are competitive in their own category. And I say, just do one thing and do it really well, something that no one else does. For us, was cloud data security. Focus with only cloud data security. If you came with on-prem, we said no to you. If you came with privacy scenarios, we said no. Later on, we started expanding, right? But originally, we only tackled one thing and we wanted to tackle it really well. And I think that's what's made us compete.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I think that's really important, especially with the age-old debate of like startups of do I do a point solution? Do I go for a platform right away? So personally, I like the very focused approach because I can tell you, Ashish and I have looked at many products that are trying to be everything for everybody, and we often tell them to focus. So I want to go back to something you mentioned a little bit earlier, Dan, which is your post around AI security being a data security problem is what drew Palo Alto Networks to Digg Security. And of course, now that you're on the inside of Palo Alto Networks, as you're looking potentially at other companies to acquire or do M&A with, what are the top 3 factors that position or interest of Palo Alto Networks or CrowdStrike or any of these platform providers to a company that they're looking to acquire?
Yeah. So I think first off, that's a great question. And of course, I'm not going to talk about the product strategy of where we're headed, but I will say each organization does it a little bit differently. I've done it in Microsoft and I've done it at Palo Alto Networks. Typically, you start the year with kind of topic areas because you hear it from customers. You start seeing where you start losing a couple of deals. Where are you losing the actual deals from? What kind of growth trajectories? And that's defined between corp dev and the actual product teams. But then each category will typically have 5 to 8 vendors that kind of matter. Typically 2 or 3 are the ones that matter more, right? And I think both Palo and Microsoft had very similar strategy. We want the best because those are the teams that can also execute at scale in an organization like ours. And Digg was one of the leading vendors in the category. So we started those types of discussion. Now, specifically when we talk about AI security in general, when we started analyzing, this all kind of started from us starting to meet founders in the specific category and then trying to understand what would we need to build if we wanted to provide an AI security product, right? And the first thing that we wanted, like everything in cybersecurity, it all starts with visibility. What kind of AI deployments do I have? How are they being used? Which data are they being trained on? And then we basically figured out that we already do most of this stuff with Digg. And then we navigated to what is my biggest fear from AI in my organization. And I think very easily we can quickly iterate around this and say, my biggest fear is that the AI deployment is going to spit out some data that it shouldn't to the wrong person or to the wrong machine, right? So basically, this is a data security problem. So what we need to understand is which AI deployments are being trained on what information, who is serving what types of data, how are they being protected, how are they being used, which applications, users, vendors, machines are touching which pieces of AI code. And then we basically understood that data security vendors are better positioned in this world of generative AI. And we started validating this with customers, and we showed this research throughout our M&A process. And I think that kind of gave us credibility to be forward-looking, not just looking at this. You mentioned point solution, not just looking at data security, but also understanding the market and the landscape of where the market is going to head as well.
Very cool. I think there's definitely something to be said about filtering out emerging vendors in a given problem space that you have at least figured out that you may lose out to if you don't move fast enough yourself. And coming from Microsoft land, I can relate to that kind of mental model. And lo and behold, I think Palo Alto and Microsoft do think alike in terms of their acquisition and consolidation play. At least I can tell that from the far, and you're confirming that from the inside a little bit. Moving on to something related to your acquisition, I would say something that's only private to a founder, which is the whole acquisition due diligence process. There's probably a lot of effort and calculations, and like you said earlier, chemistry goes into figuring out who you're going to date for the purpose of acquisition. How does the acquirer look at the acquiring company? If there is any piece of wisdom that you can offer to the listeners around that space, that will be, I think, super welcomed.
So first off, any company that will go through an acquisition process is like a very overwhelming process. I would say this. It's 150% of your job. Okay. So it's one job and a half and you still have a company to run. So definitely I would say include an additional one person or two or three in your leadership team to help out in the process. I wouldn't bring this out into the entire company. Of course, this might fail and you don't want to create the mess of this not going through and then having all your teams depressed about it or happy about it, depending on how they look at the acquisition. So we brought in our head of product, to Tom into the process as well. We brought in Tal, who has been my COO and CFO, into the process as well. And that kind of helped us a lot in the due diligence process. And we just work days and nights and weekends to complete it. It's extremely overwhelming. And one thing that I also did throughout the process is I flew out to Palo Alto to meet the team. They actually requested, but I wanted to see the chemistry. If we're going to commit some of our best years, I wanted to make sure that I like the team that I'm working with. I like the strategy that they're going through, that I think that they're going to treat our customers. And I'm very excited about what we're building now moving forward, because eventually a lot of my customers now are my friends. So we've been working together for a year or two. Some we've been discussing before I actually started the actual company. The last thing that I want to do is give them a negative experience from this acquisition as well. So I wanted to make sure that this is a force multiplier. I wanted to make sure that my team can grow, my product can grow, our technology can grow. A lot of times I see companies acquire a company and then that technology goes to die, right? We typically see that in kind of Broadcom, right? Broadcom is an amazing maybe stock to hold, but every technology that goes there goes to die, right? I really prefer that if I get acquired, then my technology can help the business accelerate. And I think that's what we found at Palo Alto. Great company, great people, and they operate like a startup. They navigate quickly, they move hard, they care, they hustle on the deal. A lot of things that kind of are very aligned with kind of the startup mentality that we held at Digg.
Very cool.
And perhaps I want to include all of the wisdom that you shared with our founder audience, Dan, with a fun question, right? Which is, if you could talk to yourself 2 years ago, or maybe at this point, 3 years ago, when you were first starting Digg, what would you tell your younger self about this whole journey?
I would probably say take mental snapshots of specific points in time of the specific journey. I miss it. I miss it already. Even though we only got acquired a couple months ago, I really miss the stress and the hustle and the early wins. And I still remember that's probably my favorite moment from Digg. We have an extra large customer in the Bay Area. And they said to us, we have budget until Monday. It was Friday. We have budget until Monday. We need to test you out before Monday. Now, we had to onboard, I think, 15,000 AWS and Google Cloud accounts. And this was Friday night, right? It's Friday night Israeli time. I immediately call my other co-founders and I say to them, guys, we have a really big opportunity here, but we need to onboard them today. And the customer onboarded at 11 p.m. Israel time on a Friday, which is our holiday day. And my entire team worked from that 11 p.m. until Saturday, 7 p.m. to get the customer onboarded completely. So by the time that he got to the office on Monday, everything was our largest customer, larger than everyone else. And it just went smoothly. And everyone was working as a team and we were clapping and we had things every couple of hours. And every time someone solved a bug, then everyone was cheering him on. And those mental snapshots, I think, is something that is super important. And I miss not taking more of them throughout this journey of kind of the good, the bad, the ugly, because that's what you remember. That's the type of stuff that you'll miss. And that's the type of stuff that kind of will probably push you to do another one eventually in the future. Because a lot of times you still remember how hard you worked and how challenging it was and the stress. But you still have those mental snapshots of kind of beautiful moments that you were able to create with kind of a good team culture and kind of the hustle and the wins and the fun. I think that's super important.
And something tells me Digg is not going to be your first and only startup. So that's awesome. Thanks so much, Dan, for coming in our virtual studio today for DeFUD and sharing all of your wisdom around the building journey, the acquisition journey. And I'm sure our founders in the audience will find your notes very helpful. So thanks again for sharing your time with us.
Fantastic.
Yes, absolutely. Pleasure having you, Dan. Sorry I cut you off earlier. I think with somebody who has been in the corporate land, in the startup land, and now again trying to continue the startup legacy in a quasi startup like Palo Alto, I think you have it all figured out.
Still navigating through it, but really appreciate being here and answering any type of question, and happy to help anytime.
Thank you for tuning in to the DeFUD Me podcast. For more hot takes and content, please leave a kind comment and click the buttons below to like, share, and subscribe. Doing so really means a lot.